Welcome back everybody to Golden Era Bookworm. I bring you 1944 Your Physique, October-November, with Joe Weider on the cover. And this cover I actually printed from Vintage Muscle Mags because my magazine is incomplete. So I've actually just stuck it on. The first page we can see one of Joe Weider's first ads. He's selling his courses and his equipment. Be careful with this magazine, it's very old. It's almost 73 years old. In the editorial, Joe Weider actually dares to state on this 5th anniversary of the magazine that the readers consider it the leader in its field. He also states that he doesn't wish to enter into competition with the other magazines, but I guess these words must have stung Bob Hoffman. If you were to read his magazines, you would quickly be able to decipher that he is not very fond of Joe Weider's magazines. The first article I'd like to talk about is Build an Impressive Physique with Chick Deutsch on the featured there doing a vacuum. In this particular article written by Barton Horvath, he talks about the impressive three. By that, the impressive three musculatures: the chest, the delts, and the abs, and how these three muscle groups, which are anterior to the body in front, really command attention. There is a focus on the chest exercises in this particular article, with a promise that further articles will talk about the other groups of muscles. He mentions parallel bar dips, dumbbell flies, which are then called lateral raises, with lying front raises, and round the world, which are basically an old school exercise where you laid on your back with the back on the bench and circled the arms from the head to the thighs using dumbbells, and finally the bent arm pullover. These 5 exercises are recommended. Prone presses such as bench press and pulley work such as the cable crossovers are also recommended. The next page, you get getting acquainted with your editor-in-chief, Joe Weider. Here are some old school photos of the late Joe Weider. Interesting is the mention of some facts here. First, the story of Your Physique magazine and the difficulty in publishing it during a world war where there are wartime restrictions on the paper are talked about, as well as establishing his line of bodybuilding equipment and books are introduced. It's interesting to note that in this magazine we learn that Joe Weider was actually one of the strongest men in Canada, and there are actually some of his lifts given here. Joe has accomplished the following: a overhead press of 222 pounds, the 2-arm snatch at 218, a clean and jerk of 285, 2-arm prone press, which is a bench press, of 240 pounds, continental jerk of 300 pounds, 1-arm snatch of 157, 1-arm clean and jerk of 187, 1-arm swing of 133, and a squat deep knee bend of 300 pounds. So Joe was quite a strong man, and actually, apparently, according to this article, by Dr. Frederick Tilney, the second strongest man in Canada at the time, with only second to Joe Sklar. His student, Ed Theriault, is the pocket rocket weightlifter, and of course Joe Weider's mission is introduced, and that is of strength and health to all. Another great article that I found interesting was the return of the Greek ideal, which I guess is a topic of nowadays, on the return of classic physique. This has much to do with it in a way, because bodybuilding is trying to return into its original art form. It talks about the modern lack of appreciation of the masculine body, and the paradox is that people, even back then, only appreciated statues, as this was seen as art, but there was a lack of appreciation of the art in nature, such as the masculine body or the female body. A call for discovering or rediscovering the Spartan methods of developing the body is addressed, with the modern Milo method suggested, which is basically progressive resistance training. Another great article I found was Dip Your Way to Greater Development, where basically dips and push-ups are spoken of with increasing difficulty, which we all know how to do nowadays. The Great Sandow. The Great Sandow is another fantastic article in this particular edition. This basically the story of Sandow. Sandow, by providence, was blessed with parental guidance, with great parental guidance. He had a half-brother, which I was unaware of, who died. Sandow, Eugene Sandow, died in 1925 on the 14th of October. And the author suggests memorials for Sandow. He actually lists them here. He would like monuments, statues of Sandow, life-size or even larger, in bronze or other durable material to be made. He proclaims a Sandow Day, and he wants institutes to be named in honor of Sandow. What I find interesting is the first two suggestions actually eventually became true, and they almost sound like initial ideas for the Mr. Olympia. At 10 years of age, his father took him to a memorable trip to Italy, which more or less changed his life. This is when he first saw the immortalized statues of ancient athletes in Florence and Rome, where he made a vow to become strong and developed. He was most impressed with the massiveness of the Farnese Hercules. And Sandow asked many questions to his father, such as why people of today were so different from these figures in physical stature, health and strength. His father answered stating, basically it had to do with survival of the fittest back then. And if I read one of the paragraphs, I could read some of the paragraphs. That actually has a lot to do with nowadays. His father also told him that the civilized races of the world had suffered a physical decline since the days of ancient heroes, that the people of young Sandow's day and age were living a life of ease and inactivity, that their excessive indulgences were responsible for physical deterioration and weakness, and that modern man and his rush for riches had lost the physical magnificence and great strength of his ancestors. What a fantastic paragraph, and it's got so much relevance today. Although he wanted to, so Eugene Sandow wanted to actually continue and become a strongman, his parents didn't really support his efforts. They actually wanted their son to be a minister of the gospel. Eventually, Sandow was sent to the University of Göttingen in Germany, then Belgium, and medical college, where he had the opportunity to learn anatomy and develop his own system of exercises for the muscles of the human body. Here it states he fixed the mind on them when exercising, which basically is the first mention of the mind-muscle connection that I've ever read of. No special diet was used by Sandow. His father found out eventually of Sandow's intentions of being an athlete and cut his allowance, so he survived by working in circuses and theatre and modelling for artists and sculptors. And he then met Professor Louis Attila, a physical instructor, and formed a partnership. They toured Rotterdam in Europe together, wrestling and doing strongman acts, and later they parted and Sandow decided to try his luck in Amsterdam. After this, this article in particular is continued in the next issue. There are other interesting bits and pieces in this magazine, such as how to demonstrate your strength correctly, which in this particular article by Harold Ansorge is basically, he explains how to execute the splits and supporting weights and how these acts demonstrate strength correctly. There is also a nice article on weight training and sexual power, dispelling the myth that weight training interferes with sexual power. Towards the end of the lesson, magazine, there is a jiu-jitsu lesson with Joe Weider, actually throwing the punch. It's pretty interesting. And one very last little tidbit is the exercise of the month, which I found really interesting, and it is a lying at a supine on a supine way, so with your back towards the floor. He's lying. Barbell front raise, so it's a barbell front raise lying on the floor, which I thought was pretty cool because I've never seen that before, how it works on the anterior deltoids. Anyway, that's the end of this review of Your Physique 1944 October-November with Joe Weider on the cover. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you like these videos. If you want any particular magazine issue talked about, please let me know. Write your comments, etc. And if you have any magazines you wish to donate, I'd be happy if you were to get in contact. Thank you very much. Have a good one.